All right. So we're diving into cybersecurity today.
Okay.
And, it's a lot. It can be kind of overwhelming.
It really can, yeah.
We're trying to sort of like create a starter pack.
Right.
To help people get a grasp of.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it because we really want to give people like the keys to the kingdom, right?
Absolutely.
Like how do you unlock this understanding of how to protect yourself?
Yeah, and they use the term assets.
Right.
But it's not like we're talking about, people's...
Not just your house.
Yeah, cars and stuff. It's like this Simply Learn video I was watching. Wow. They were talking about how it's
everything, yeah.
It's so broad now. It's networks, programs, systems, data.
And increasingly people, facilities, right? Because it's also interconnected.
They even use Coca-Cola as an example, like someone getting a hold of their recipe.
Yeah.
Like, that's tough.
And that gets to the heart of what cybersecurity is all about, which is really risk, right? It's like, what are the threats to your assets? How likely are they to happen? And what's the impact if they do happen?
So it's not just this abstract.
No, it's very real world.
Yeah.
So like sticking with Coca-Cola, right?
Oh.
The formula is the asset. The threat might be like corporate espionage, right?
Okay.
Somebody trying to steal that secret recipe. The impact, potentially devastating, lost revenue.
Damaged brand,
right? Yeah, no, that makes sense. So how do we even begin to think about tackling that?
Well,
because I know the video mentions different types of hackers.
Right.
Which already I'm like...
Sounds very dramatic.
It does.
So you got your black hats.
Okay.
Right? Your black hats are your classic bad guys. Okay?
Yeah.
Like you see them in the movies.
Yeah.
Out for personal gain, wreaking havoc.
Okay.
Stealing your information. They're the ones behind things like data breaches, ransomware attacks, all that kind of nasty stuff.
Okay, and then are the white hats the good guys then?
The good guys, exactly.
Okay. So think of them as like cybersecurity professionals, ethical hackers, who use their skills to try to find vulnerabilities in systems before the black hats can exploit them.
So they're like
we're the good guys.
The digital detectives on our side.
Exactly, working to keep us all safe.
That's reassuring.
But here's the thing. It's not just these kind of malicious actors we have to worry about.
Oh, okay.
Right. It's natural disasters, system failures.
Okay.
Even well-intentioned but clueless users can pose risks.
Right.
Right.
So it's like you need this cybersecurity to be prepared for anything.
It's like an immune system for all of your, data and systems, right? And like any good immune system, it needs to be multi-layered. Which is where understanding the core principles comes in, what's known as the CIA triad.
The CIA? Like that CIA?
Not that CIA, not the Central Intelligence Agency.
Okay.
But in cybersecurity, CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Think of them as the 3 pillars of information security.
Okay.
I'm intrigued.
So let's break it down.
Okay.
Let's start with confidentiality.
Okay.
This is all about keeping sensitive information secret.
Right.
Things like your bank account details.
Yeah.
Your personal medical records. Even your private messaging.
Okay.
Right.
That makes sense, yeah. And I know the video gave examples, like...
Absolutely.
They were saying banks use things like HTTPS, multi-factor authentication...
Exactly.
For their online banking to add those layers.
Exactly. So that's all about confidentiality.
Yeah.
Then you got integrity. Which ensures that the data hasn't been tampered with, right?
Okay.
Imagine like a digital seal of authenticity.
So no one's like sneaking in and like changing your bank balance or something.
Exactly. Yeah. A real world example is like digital signatures on financial transactions.
Oh, okay.
Right? So it's like a virtual fingerprint, verifying that the transaction is legitimate.
Okay.
Right. So that's integrity.
Okay.
And then last but not least, we have availability.
Availability means making sure that systems and data are accessible when you need them. Right.
Okay.
Imagine your banking app crashing during a flash sale.
Ooh, that's like a nightmare scenario.
Right. And it highlights why all 3 elements of the CIA triad are essential. Confidentiality to protect the information, integrity to make sure it's accurate, and availability to make sure you can actually access it when you need it.
So it's like this 3-legged stool. And if one of them gets knocked out...
the whole thing falls apart.
Exactly. And speaking of things that can fall apart, the video also mentioned ransomware.
Oh, yeah.
Which sounds scary.
It's a growing threat, for sure.
What exactly is it?
So imagine this. Your computer files suddenly become hostages. They're encrypted. You can't access them. And the only way to get them back is by paying a ransom to the attackers.
So it's like digital kidnapping.
Basically, yeah. And it's exactly what happened with that big WannaCry ransomware attack a few years back.
Which the video talked about, and it affected like what was it, like 200,000 computers in 150 countries or something?
Something like that. It spread like wildfire.
Yeah, that's insane.
Which highlights how crucial it is to have those strong cybersecurity defenses. And ransomware is just one example, right? You also have things like phishing. Those deceptive emails or messages designed to trick you into giving up your personal information.
Oh, I get those all the time in my inbox.
Right. They try to look like they're from someone you trust.
Yeah.
And they often try to create a sense of urgency, like, oh, you need to act now, or click on this link right away.
Yeah.
And they prey on your emotions, right? Maybe it's fear, maybe it's greed, who knows? But they're trying to get you to take the bait.
So like those ones that say you won the lottery, but you have to put your bank information in to...
Exactly, exactly. They prey on that kind of like, oh, this is too good to be true.
Right, right.
Which it usually is. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And remember, a legitimate organization, they're never going to ask you for your passwords, your account details, through email or over the phone.
That's a good point.
You know?
Yeah.
So always be wary of that.
So it's that trust but verify.
Exactly. Yeah, trust but verify. Always a good rule of thumb.
It seems like they're always trying to find new ways in, too. Like, how do we even keep up with...
It's tough.
Yeah, all the new threats.
Well, that's where having those strong security practices from the get-go can be really helpful.
Like what?
Well, think of it like this. It's like washing your hands.
Right.
Okay? It's a simple practice, but it's your first line of defense against germs. In the digital world, your hand washing is making sure you have strong passwords.
Okay.
Because if you don't, then hackers can use something called a brute force attack.
Okay. And what's that?
Basically, they just try every single password combination they can think of until they crack it.
Oh, okay. So it's like they just keep trying every combination until they get it.
Exactly, exactly.
Right.
So password 123 probably not going to cut it.
Yeah, no, I'm getting that.
Right.
Yeah.
You want something strong and unique for each of your accounts.
Yeah.
And that's where, password managers are a lifesaver. Oh, yeah, those are great.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to remember all those crazy passwords.
Exactly.
But even with that, like, two-factor authentication is also a must.
Right.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It's like having a security guard check your ID.
Okay.
Even if you have the key to the building.
Okay.
Right? It adds that extra layer of protection. So it's like, okay, you got past the first hurdle, but now you need a second form of verification, like that code they text to your phone or whatever.
That makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
So even if someone gets their hands on your password, they still can't get in.
Okay, that's good.
Exactly.
And the video also really stressed keeping your systems and software updated.
Oh, yeah.
Which I'm so bad at. Like, I always postpone those updates.
I know, it's so tempting.
It is.
Just be like, ugh, later. But those updates often include really important security patches.
Okay.
Right? They fix vulnerabilities that have been discovered.
So it's like they find a hole and they're like plugging the hole.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Think of it like reinforcing the locks on your doors and windows. Right?
Right.
You wouldn't wait until after a break-in to do that.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Right. So those updates are like you're basically upgrading your digital security system.
Okay.
You're staying one step ahead.
Right.
Hopefully.
So beyond the basics then, because the video did mention some more of that, like encryption.
Right.
Is that something that people really need to understand in detail?
I mean, I think, knowing the basics can be empowering.
Okay.
Right? So, for example, with encryption, understanding how that works can help you choose, secure communication tools, protect your privacy online, things like that.
So encryption basically means you're like scrambling a message.
Yeah, you're scrambling a message so that only someone with the right key can unscramble it.
Okay.
Right.
So only the people who are supposed to read it can read it.
Exactly. It's like sending a postcard, but it's written in code.
Oh.
Right? So only the person who knows the code can decipher it.
Okay, that makes sense. And then firewalls.
Yeah.
Those are kind of like the digital bouncers, right?
Exactly. They act as a barrier between your network, like your home network, for example,
okay,
and the outside world. And they basically filter incoming and outgoing traffic. They block anything that looks suspicious.
So they're guarding the door.
Exactly.
And checking digital IDs or something.
Exactly. They're like, hold on, who are you? What are you doing here?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And what about ethical hacking?
Right.
Because we talk about those white hat hackers. Is that basically what that is?
Yeah, so ethical hacking is basically like a controlled experiment.
Okay.
Right? Where these ethical hackers, they use their skills, but they do it in a way that's, legal and authorized
to
actually simulate real world attacks.
Yeah.
So they're trying to find the vulnerabilities before the bad guys can exploit them.
So it's almost like there's security consultants who stage a break-in to show you where you're vulnerable.
Exactly. And it's not just about finding the vulnerabilities. It's about understanding, okay, so we found a weakness. How can it be exploited?
Okay.
And what are the best ways to fix it?
So they give you like a whole plan.
Exactly.
Right.
It's about proactively strengthening your defenses.
Right.
Rather than just reacting after something bad has already happened.
Okay, that's good.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And then this is interesting, too, because the video mentioned social engineering.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds kind of creepy.
It can be.
What is that?
So social engineering is a big threat because it really targets the human element of security, which, let's be honest, can often be the weakest link.
Right, yeah.
Right. So instead of trying to, hack into a system directly, social engineering is all about manipulating people.
Oh.
Right. It's about getting them to give up sensitive information or grant access.
So it's more about tricking someone into unlocking the door rather than breaking it down.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. So imagine this. You get an email, looks like it's from your bank, asking you to verify your account details. So you're like, oh, okay, my bank, I should probably do this. You click the link, you enter your info, boom. The attacker now has access to your bank account.
Wow. So they really play on your trust.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They exploit that.
And people's desire to do the right thing, right?
Absolutely. They often
Yeah.
make you feel like, oh, if you don't do this right now, something bad is going to happen.
All right.
So you're kind of acting out of fear.
So how do we protect ourselves against that then?
Well, awareness is key,
Okay.
right? Just being aware that these kinds of scams exist.
Okay.
Be wary of unsolicited emails or messages, especially ones asking for personal information.
Okay.
Always double check the sender's address.
Okay.
Like hover over the link to see where it's actually taking you.
Right.
And never, ever feel pressured to give up sensitive information.
Okay.
And if something feels off, if your gut is telling you this doesn't seem right, trust your gut. Don't be afraid to reach out to the company directly, but use their official contact info.
Right. Not the one in the email.
Exactly. Don't just click on the link in the email. Go to their website, find their actual contact information.
Okay. That's a really good tip.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all about being cautious and not letting your guard down in the digital world, just like you wouldn't in the real world.
Right. It's like you're walking down a dark alley.
Exactly. You're going to be more aware of your surroundings. You're going to be paying attention.
Have your guard up.
Exactly. And it's the same thing online.
Right. And that's where those phishing scams come in.
Exactly. Phishing is like the classic example of social engineering. It's those emails or messages designed to look like they're from someone you trust.
Right.
And they try to, like I said, create that sense of urgency or play on your emotions like, oh no, your accounts have been compromised or you need to act now.
Or they might try to appeal to your greed.
Right, like you've won something. Exactly. You've won the lottery, but you need to give us your bank details to claim your prize.
Right, right.
Come on.
Yeah, if it sounds too good to be true.
Exactly. It probably is.
Yeah.
And remember, legitimate organizations, they're never going to ask you for sensitive information like your passwords or your account details through email or over the phone.
Right, that's a really good point.
So always be wary of that.
Yeah. It really seems like cybersecurity is a lot more than just, I don't know, the technical stuff. It's really about awareness and understanding how to navigate this digital world safely.
You got it. That's a great way to put it. We're all digital citizens now, and understanding the basics of cybersecurity is just as important as, I don't know, knowing how to cross the street safely or just basic safety tips for life in general.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So where do we even go from here? Because we've talked about a lot. We've gone from the basics to real-world threats, defenses. What's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway is that everyone has the power to protect themselves. Cybersecurity, it might seem complicated, overwhelming, but you don't need a degree in computer science to be safe online.
Right.
It really comes down to awareness, taking those simple precautions we've talked about, and knowing where to turn if you need help.
So it's about empowering yourself with the knowledge to just be safe online.
Exactly. Think about it. Like, you don't need to be a mechanic to drive a car safely, right?
Right.
You need to understand the basic rules of the road, practice good driving habits. And that's kind of how I think of cybersecurity.
Okay, so what are some of our rules of the road then when it comes to the digital world?
Well, start with the basics we've talked about. Create those strong, unique passwords for all of your accounts. Use two-factor authentication whenever it's available. Don't forget to keep your systems and your software updated. And always be cautious about clicking on links or downloading anything from sources you don't recognize.
Yeah, those are all really good points.
And if something feels off, trust your gut. Don't be afraid to ask questions, double-check things. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Absolutely.
And there are a ton of resources available online and in your local community. If you need help, don't hesitate to reach out.
Right. There are people who know this stuff who can help.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a really interesting deep dive. I feel like we just scratched the surface of cybersecurity, but hopefully this is a good starting point for our listeners.
Absolutely. And, the most important thing is that you stay curious, you stay informed, and you stay safe out there.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of another deep dive. We explore the world of cybersecurity, which can be exciting and a little bit scary at times.
It's a constantly evolving landscape, that's for sure.
But knowledge is power. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.